Hey everybody, John Self. Welcome to Your Career Community Question Time. We're on every Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time, and we've got a lot of questions here for you. And 1 minute, I'm not going to embarrass my assistant. She's coming in to bring me the questions that have come in prematurely. So if you guys will just hold 1 second. Thank you. Okay, we got a good group, so let me come back. I hope everybody's having a great Friday so far. It was a beautiful day here. It was a wonderful day in East Texas last night after 2 days of very, very challenging weather, a lot of rainfall, a lot of high wind, and so we're glad it's kind of calmed down, and we're not going to have rain again for at least through Tuesday of next week. It was so nice last night. My wife and I sat out on our outdoor living area, which is above it's our patio, but our patio is extends out over the opening to the garage. And so we kind of watched people coming and going and had a drink. And it was a very pleasant evening. So today starting off great. So I'm probably going to get some outdoor time again today because I enjoy reading. And when it's reading, I've got my pencils and I've got all my stuff, my tools, my sticky notes. Good Lord, I can't just go read a book. I've got to have all these tools to help me. But so we're looking forward to spending some time out there this afternoon. And so let's get to your questions. And let's start off with Randall in Columbia, South Carolina. Hey, your women's basketball team really did it this year. What a great accomplishment for the women's basketball team at South Carolina. You hear about UConn, and you heard a lot about Caitlin at Iowa. But quite frankly, what the South Carolina team did this year was pretty amazing, women's basketball. And they outdrew the men's basketball Final Four. Although they still treat women like second-class sports figures, the media does. And they were even having part of the press conference in the parking lot because the press room was being used by one of the rooms they were going to use the press for. The men's basketball people were in there dominating it. So the NCAA, you guys still have a lot of garbage to clean up, so get busy. The women basketball really did an amazing job this year. So let's get back to Randall. Excuse me for the rant. I was laid off 3 months ago. I'm sorry, Randall. It's been a while since I've had to look for work, so I decided to take a proactive step and hire a resume expert. I've been diligently submitting resumes for jobs, but haven't received any calls yet. I'm starting to wonder, what am I missing? Okay, Randall, let me ask you a couple of questions, and you can respond in the chat if you would like, or if you would just take this offline, that's fine as well. Did your resume writer tell you that you had to customize that document he prepared, he or she, you didn't say which, he or she prepared for you, that you were going to have to customize that for the job summaries that you were applying to? If they didn't do that, then you didn't get your full value for your money. Resume writers can be very helpful in helping you, really decipher what's really important in your background, in your value statement. They really do a good job with that. However, they don't always tell you the truth about what's happening in the job market because, quite frankly, resume writers are probably going to be irrelevant in 3 to 5 years, along with coaches. I think we have a question. Somebody said we had a question about that came in yesterday as well. So here's what I would suggest you do. You probably have a great resume. Is it a single column, one column resume? That's another question I have for you. Do you have a lot of graphs and fancy colors and a lot of graphics on the resume? Another question. If you have your picture graphs, if they use multiple columns, the chances are some of the older resume scanners, applicant tracking systems, also affectionately known as applicant tossing systems, they will eject your resume. And they don't notify you that your resume has been ejected because half the time the employer doesn't even know your resume has been ejected. So here's the thing, they use ATS because the old manual way of looking at resumes was really, it was not efficient. it was loaded with bias. There was a lot of discrimination. And so corporations were trying to improve efficiency, and second, they were trying to get rid of some of the bias that was in the hiring process. And so they started using, in the late 90s, a lot of bigger companies started using these applicant tracking systems. Today, 95% of all companies use it. Even if you're applying online using ZipRecruiter or iHire or Indeed, they all use a variation of applicant tracking systems. And so applicant tracking systems don't like multiple columns as a general rule. They don't want too much fancy formatting, because the underlying code will sometimes wreck the scanner's ability to read your value. So here's the thing I would recommend. Number one, get just a good basic resume format. We have a free guide online. Go to johngself.com. On the right side, there's something, it's a little red ribbon, and it says, click to join our career boot camp. That will take you to the page where the free resume download is located, and go there and it will help you. That resume guide was put together in consult with some other recruiters. I spent 27 years in that industry, so I talked to some of my colleagues, and they told us, they really talked to us about what they liked, what they didn't like, what made it easier to read on the screen, what doesn't make it easier to read. And so you can download that resume guide. If you have any other questions, you can email me at info@johngself.com, and I'm happy to answer any of your other questions. Your resume is your first interview, okay? You're not going to be there, and now with applicant tracking systems, the employer's not going to be there. It's kind of, don't you love the irony? So, but you have, before you submit it, you need to go through you need to go through the job summary. I'm going to see if I have one here. Excuse me. I marked one up for a client the other day, and I set it over aside, and my crack housekeeping team has been here today. And so, but I counted 12 keywords and phrases that I would use in a resume. And sometimes there are more, sometimes there's less. So, some of these jobs that they promote and put out on the web for you to apply for are so incredibly lame. They're so bad. You can hardly understand what they're really looking for in the job, in the hiring process. So the less information you get in the job summary, the more questions you're going to have to ask doing the scanning process or screening process, if you get that far. And I would say that quite frankly, you've got to absolutely pay a lot of attention to the keywords and phrases, because that's what the algorithm is tied to, and that's what the computer or the scanner is reading. So, Randall in South Carolina, congratulations on the basketball championship, and a great accomplishment. I don't think they're getting the credit they deserve, but women's sports as general don't. Danny in Bogalusa, is that Louisiana or is that someplace else? Alabama, it doesn't say here. I saw one of your videos where you said to be very wary of the career management advice you get online, but you're all over the internet. Are you criticizing your competitors, or are you just smarter than everybody else? Good point, Danny in Bogalusa. Let me say this. There are some great people on the internet who are giving out some great advice. Two things I want to say. First of all, a lot of the advice is really kind of generic. It's tailored for what they think is the biggest slice of the audience. A lot of those guys are trying to get their site monetized, so they're trying to get a lot of subscribers and a lot of views. And to get advertisement on your YouTube channel, you got to have I think you have to have 1,000 subscribers and thousands of hours of views. So that's their obsession. And so consequently, the advice they give is more generic, because they're trying to cast the biggest net they can. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, the advice that you give to somebody who's just starting their career, or is at the midpoint of their career and is not yet a manager or an executive, is totally different than how you're going to advise an executive or a manager. So you have to be aware of that first. Second, look at the date it was posted. I got to tell you something. I've moved from executive search and global executive search because I just really got tired of traveling. I'd been traveling for 30 or 40 years, and I thought that was enough. I really, my ego just didn't require me to have any, airline status anymore. So Excuse me. Excuse me. I was sitting out this morning having coffee, and apparently there's pollen in the air. Who thought? Who'd have thought? So the second thing you want to do is be sure when that information was posted, because if it's posted 5 years ago, it may not be relevant. It may be out of date. I mean, this business is changing at the speed of light. And I spend a ton of time reading, trying to stay ahead so that I can give my clients the latest updated information. And matter of fact, we were doing that yesterday morning on our 7:30 a.m. Career Live, where we try to do technology updates and news updates on what's happening in recruiting. So if you have an interest and want to follow that, check us out every Thursday morning at 7:30 a.m. on Career Live. It's here on YouTube, it's on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. One of these days, we're going to crack the code to Instagram and move over there as well. But anyway, I hope that helps. Pay attention to when it was posted. If it was the last year and a half, that's probably going to be still probably okay advice. But in some areas, not so much. So you just really have to pay attention to when the information was posted, because once it's up there, it's kind of like any other search engine. It never goes away. Let's see. So, and there are a lot of great people out there posting great content. And I focus on managers and executives. Now, supervisors are can move into that category as well. But most of my clients are managers and supervisors. Let's see. I took a job because I needed to return to work. But even before I started, I knew in my gut that it was a mistake. On my first day, they threw me into the pool's deep end without so much as a how do you do. After 3 months, they terminated me without any previous notice for, quote, performance reasons. I have 2 questions. I am so angry that I want to make them pay for how badly they treated me. Should I file a wrongful termination lawsuit? And do I have to list that job on my resume since I was there for such a short period of time? Barbara said, just say I'm in the New York City area. Okay, Barbara, you may be one of the smaller cities around the area, so I can understand that. You probably don't want your former employer hearing this. First of all, unless it's really, really egregious, do not sue. And the reason for that is because if you sue a former employer, sometimes that tends to get around, especially if it's a smaller industry. Healthcare is notoriously bad about really dissing people if they sue a former employer. Healthcare people, they don't like lawsuits because they're expensive. And so if you sued your former employer, you're like persona non grata. So don't do it unless it was really egregious and unless your attorney is a crack ace attorney in employment law and tells you got a 100% case and that you probably can get a really good settlement. Okay, then in that case, if the reward is worth the risk, then consider that. But you might want to probably have to change industries. So consider that. Yes. How long were you on that? It doesn't really say here. If you were in that job more than about 5 or 6 months, you probably need to put it on your resume and just be very honest and put the term of employment. What happened? I made a mistake. They did not give me a lot of information. I should have asked more questions. And so today, if I ask a lot of questions, you'll understand why I am. I'm not challenging. I just want to be sure I fully understand what you need me to do and how you're going to judge my success. And that was a huge mistake on my fault. They didn't provide any orientation. They didn't provide any onboarding. And so I was kind of thrown into the deep end of the pool. So you can use that answer. Employers they didn't bring you there to eliminate you. They brought you there because they were looking for a reason to hire you. So be honest, be sincere, think about the statement you want to make when that question comes up, because it probably will. So rehearse the answer. Don't memorize it, but learn it. When people memorize stuff, it's terrible. But learn it and really think it through. Don't start coming up with an answer while you're sitting in front of your next prospective employer. Okay, that doesn't work very good at all. Let's see. I am sick of my job. My employer tracks our social media profiles. They have strict rules about what we can. Excuse me again. Those kind of employers choke me up. They what we can and cannot post. I thought I had a First Amendment right of free speech. Well, in some industries, there's some restrictions on that. How can I start looking for a job if I cannot post? I have a small network. I have numerous clients, but I certainly cannot network with them. What can I do? This is Connor, and he said use the mid-state Pennsylvania area. Connor, yeah, I have a client that's in that similar position. So it's called off the grid networking, and I've written some articles about that, and you can find them in my blog. You can go to our webpage, johngself.com, click the blog post, and they'll take you to a page, and there should be a little box there for a searchable search, so you can do a search. If you've looked over some of that stuff and still have some questions, you go to my website, go to the bottom of the page, and there's an icon there that says schedule a call with John, and we can do it on the telephone, we can do it with Zoom. But it's not really difficult. It's harder. It's much harder to network when you have to be kind of secretive about it, but you can do it. So off the grid networking is better than no networking. And so I encourage, if you work for an organization that tracks your social media post, if you work for an organization that has restrictions on what you can and can't post, then I would suggest you do off the grid networking. You won't be visible. You won't have a profile that the scanners will find you. You're going to be pretty much invisible. So you're going to have to work really hard to build an off the grid networking deal. Keep in mind, most of the great jobs are not posted online. They are found by email. No, excuse me. They are found by the LinkedIn scanners, which scanning profiles all the time, looking for top talent based on specific algorithms, and or they're referred by hopefully a person in your network. So you might get referred by someone you network with. Keep in mind, networking takes time. It takes time, and it requires you to build relationships. So it really can be a real pain in the you-know-what. But that's better than nothing. Don't sit around, because I guarantee you they'll keep tight rein on you until they kick you to the curb. I don't really trust some companies. Let's see. I'm a vice president in manufacturing performance improvement. I've always been successful in my career, but I'm starting to feel stagnant. Could hiring an executive coach be the next step in my help me in my next step of professional development? Well, yeah, it's always great to get an outside perspective of where, what you're doing, where you are, and your value proposition, that sort of thing. The worst thing you can do is feel stagnant and then don't do anything about it. The last thing you want to do in your job is just have a job where you're paying the bills till you die. Okay, you really want to be doing something that you are, you feel connection with, that you feel passionate about. You want to do some work that's meaningful and that you feel like you're helping other people. That can add great meaning in your own life. And so I would suggest that you do hire a coach. I work with managers and executives. There are a lot of people out there, great coaches. Find someone that you trust. Find someone you have a connection with. And if you need customized packages, the good coaches will kind of sit down with you, kind of assess where you are, and then work with you to kind of move where you want to be. That's the key thing in life. I was laid off from my job as a team lead for a computer coding company. My team were coders. I had been looking for 9 months and have not had much more luck than just an occasional screening interview. What's going on? When I graduated from university 10 years ago, I was told this would be a safe career choice. And at the time, I had multiple job offers. Now I'm not so sure. What are your thoughts? This is Daniel in San Francisco. Daniel in San Francisco. If you're tracking your industry, and I hope you are, last year there were over 270,000 people laid off in technology. Why is that? Well, because anytime there's something that starts off and it's a red hot rocket, they're scrambling to get people, in the door to do the work. Just like a lot of companies hired people during the pandemic, and now they're having to relook at their work headcount. Consulting companies, case in point, they're looking at the cut headcount because they don't have the work that they used to have. In your industry, there's not as much demand that they, for that kind of coding. Plus, and this is the big, elephant in the room. As AI emerges and you start seeing, deeper learning and the automation of automation, the first people to go are going to be the base level coders, because the computer, AI can probably code faster and more accurately than the human being. I mean, if you go back and looked at what coding was initially, it was built around if this, then what, okay? If this happens, then what happens? And coders will tell you that in many cases, they had to kind of guess. And so, the good coders were people that just had a good sense in their brain of how a program should work. Well, so now companies are going to begin to start using computers to do the coding. So the computers are going to do the code that run other computers. So I would suggest that this might be a time to start your homework and look for a career change. I know people love technology, and some people are just, they just are miserable because they've gotten laid off from really good jobs. I mean, Google just was ruthless, and they're continuing to lay off to adjust their headcount so that they meet their cash flow projections to fund additional automation. So I would start thinking about other things, and start off generically, and start thinking, what jobs are people going to need going forward? One guy I talked to was really, really handy with his, really handy, and was really good at, and it was a passion. It was his hobby because he did things for his wife and his family, but he was an excellent cabinet builder. I mean, it's just amazing some of the stuff he had built for his wife. And he was showing me all these pictures, and I was like, gosh, my wife wants to redo the kitchen in our condo, and it's like, holy moly, she'd go crazy if she saw some of this. He could very easily, and may eventually, excuse me again, because he's in an industry that has some risk for automation. His plan B is to start a cabinet building company. There is a big time shortage of tradesmen, and people who build things with their hands, and people who can do the finished carpentry and do the nice installations. Those people are always going to be in demand. And I live in a city called Tyler, which is outside of Dallas, about an hour and 15, 20 minutes. And in this town, there's a shortage of tradesmen. There's going to be a shortage of plumbers. There's going to be a shortage of people who build things. We've got a terrific infrastructure crisis in this country because we spent money on other stuff for so long. Now they've just done a big infrastructure bill, but that's just hardly a drop in the bucket. So there's going to be ongoing infrastructure, so if you enjoy that kind of work, you might look at that as a career opportunity. People will always need to eat. and people say, oh, the robots are going to take over the waiter jobs. Well, if they can't hire enough waiters, that may be the case. That may drive that development sooner than we expect. But there are going to need to be people who like to cook, and you can make a decent living in cooking. Now, when you start off your career, no, you can't. The average pay of a line cook, unless you're in California, is terrible. And it's hard work. I grew up in the food business. My parents owned a bakery, but people are always going to need birthday cakes. They're always going to need food to eat. And so, one guy, he always had a passion for cooking, and his dream was to always to have a diner. And his community was right on the interstate. And, he owns some land just right off the interstate. And, he's now thinking and planning about building a really nice diner And I told him, I said, be careful what you pray for. But he's excited about this, and that's going to be his fallback position because he's always wanted to work in that industry. And if you're going to work in an industry, learn about it. Okay, learn how to do it. Learn what you have to do to manage it. Learn how you have to control your costs like a crazy person. Do your homework. But it's I've been an entrepreneur since 94, I guess, and really before that, actually in the 90s, early 90s, and I haven't had a paycheck since 1989. 1989 was the last paycheck I got. So it's crazy. In the meantime, well, that's not true. Hold on. Flash. I was just thinking, I was doing a contract position. They asked me to take over a job, and the lawyer said you had to be an employee to do that if they were going to pay me on a regular basis, and I was going to do the work at the organization. So there was about a 2-year period there that I was an employee. Hated it. Hated the guy I was working for. He was a real jerk. Every day when he would come around, it was like jerk alert, jerk alert. And we eventually agreed to disagree, and I went back out on my own. But being on your own can be really risky. It can be really dangerous in terms of your financial security, but it's great if you have the ability to work for yourself. It's really great. There are people now who are in some industries working on an interim or just needed basis, or doing interims or turnarounds. And there are a lot of industries that are going to go through incredible stress. So those are just a couple of ideas. Let's see. I would Daniel, I would say this. You're in a dead end job. I'm in a dead end job, and I'll explain that in a minute because I do see a question here about that. Okay, if you were an AI at-risk job, what alternatives would you consider? This is Patty from Austin. Patty, I'm in an at-risk job. Within 5 years, computers will be able to give you the information updated faster, in a more compelling way than I can as an individual. So I'm not going to be in the business of selling information going forward. I'm going to be in the business to do things. I'll have to add value in a different way. So instead of trying to educate people, I'm going to have to be in a business where I am showing them how to maximize the information they're getting. The information is probably going to be out there at a very low cost, or it's going to be free. So, people are not going to want to monetize my YouTube page because they can get this information someplace else. And they can probably, the AI will be able to produce videos and produce how-to stuff much faster than I can. So I'm at a point in my life where, I want to keep busy because my wife informed me that she didn't marry me to have lunch every day. So I have to keep busy. Just because I'll go crazy, and she will too. So I write a lot, and I've written some stuff on career management, and that can provide some revenue. And somebody says, "No, wait a minute, AI can write books faster than you can." Yes, they can. The question is, can AI write interesting books? They can write fast books. They can write books fast, but are they interesting? And do they provide you the nuance that you really need? Maybe in 10 years, that will be a very real possibility. But short term, I don't think that's a big threat to me. My threat is going to be on the exchange of information. Now, I also do a lot of work in coaching where we talk about strategy and where I'm helping people see issues that are holding them back. And really, computers can't really do that. So you're going to have to add your value in a way that just the artificial intelligence can't really do the job. There, as I said, I'm too old to go back into my parents' bakery business. They sold that years ago, and quite frankly, I had enough of that when I was growing up. I hate washing pots and pans, and now you know why. Okay, so I'm paying great attention to how AI is evolving. And let me tell you this, it's evolving much faster than people think it is. Okay, I've got time for one more question. This is kind of interesting. I've got a question from Ben from Billings, the Big Sky Country. Ben, email me and let's get together, and because you've asked a question that's got a lot of meat to it, and so we'll talk about that off the grid, off the network. Okay, this person says, is Siri a product of AI? Yes, it is. It is. The voice assistants are all examples of conversational AI, and the bots are simply programmed with answers, but instead of a result machine, they have natural learning capacity. These machines have natural learning capacity, so it's kind of an amazing. Siri is people like to. It's kind of the feature people like to cuss and discuss. But those, like every other thing in the AI world, it's going to get more sophisticated, it's going to get better, and it's going to be able to play more realistically a role as a virtual assistant. You have all these people that want to be my virtual assistant. They're in India, Pakistan, all over the globe. And my response is, I'm sorry, your career is going to get eliminated. And, we're not hiring virtual assistants right now. So, last question. This is self-serving. Roger in Cleveland, Ohio said, I hear you're doing a career boot camp. When is it and how much does it cost? It's on Saturday, April 27th. It's scheduled for 3 hours, but we're already realizing it's chock-a-block full of good information, so it may go over. If you are not able to attend on a Saturday morning because you've got sports events with kids or honey-do list or whatever that is, you can register, and then you'll have 60 days to access all the information. We've got Ron Thomas, who is a super, super incredibly interesting guy who has a consulting practice in Dubai that he's built. He was originally from a small town in South Carolina, and he's done something that he's always wanted to do. And it happened because he took risk. And he's going to be here to talk about those risks and to talk about how you would go about building your brand to if you wanted to become an expat or somebody who works overseas. And then T.D. Smyers, who's a wonderful friend, was an incredibly talented naval commander, was a captain in the Navy. He was also a really brilliant executive over a couple of not-for-profits in Dallas-Fort Worth. The Fort Worth Business Journal said he was one of the best not-for-profit CEOs in the marketplace. He's going to be here to talk to you about once you get the job, how do you transition so that you keep the job? So that's all the things coming up. It's free. Go to our website, johngself.com. On the right tab, on the right side, there's the tab. You can click it, and that will take you to the sign-up page. And you will also, if you would like to, you can also sign up for our newsletter to keep current of what's happening in the business, and that is John G. Self Substack. And it's Guiding Your Career, and it's on Substack. It's a free subscription as long as you subscribe before May 6th. At midnight, May 6th, it's become $7 a month. Okay, I hope everybody had got some good information today. If you have other questions, you can always email us at info@johngself.com. That's info@johngself.com. And we'll be back here next Friday at 11 a.m. to answer more of your questions. Next week, on Wednesday at 4 o'clock, we will have our office hours. The encore is at 7 p.m. at night if you can't catch the live version. That right now is public accessible, but once our membership program grows up, gains some steam, and we have more members, that will become a members-only feature. So if you have an interest and want to be involved in a community of people who want to support each other, find a job, then I encourage you to visit our webpage and click the bar about the Career Boot Camp, and that'll take you to our portfolio page, and you can read about our career network. So thank you very much. Let's see one more question. Thanks, Facebook, for listening in today. I appreciate it. I hope this was useful information, Facebook user, and really appreciate your input. Thank you very, very much for being here today. Thank you for listening, Facebook listener. Thank all of you who will come visit this later in the day on the replay. It'll be on YouTube this afternoon and forever, and it'll stay on, I think, Facebook and LinkedIn probably for the rest of the day or for a couple of days. I don't really know how long they stay over there. But our YouTube channel is Guiding Your Career, John G. Self. Okay, enough of all this. Cheers, everybody. I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks so much.